I want this endless cleric rambling to stop, so let's just get over with those 3 final subclasses. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you're waging war or tricking people in the twilight, I'm here to help you with everything. A quick thank you to all of you for watching me do my thing. Looking at those YouTube statistics always fills my heart with joy and pride and other mixed feelings. Don't hesitate to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, click the bell. I don't know if YouTube has hidden any other buttons in the meanwhile. Just do the thing that makes me appear in other people's searches. There you go. No, not those kind of searches. Normal ones, damn it. So, we are rounding up our clerics today. There's 3 subclasses left: Trickery, Twilight and War. We'll start with Trickery. It's very simple. You are trying to be a rogue who is also a cleric, and this is weird. I'm going to say it up front, Trickery is not the best cleric subclass in my humble opinion. I think it's pretty good in a campaign that is doing a lot of intrigue and subterfuge and maybe exploration wise, but the actual benefits in combat are a bit dodgy as they tax your action economy heavily and your concentration, and that is not always that interesting. Nonetheless, it's a really flavorful class, and you do gain some spells that the cleric otherwise has no access to. Question is, of course, how useful are all of those spells? Let's start by having a look at that. So, as a Trickery cleric, you gain access to a lot of spells that have to do with illusions, disguises, some teleportation as well, and even at the higher levels you get Dominate Person and Modify Memory. So along with that you get Blink and Dispel Magic. Dispel Magic is actually a good pickup here. It's a cleric spell, yes, but it is one of those quintessential spells in the game that this is really good to have fixed in your prepped spell list. You remember that I have 2 types of spell that I like in my spell list: good spells from non-cleric classes or really good spells from the cleric class, which means you don't have to pick those up with your spell slot, so you can pick up some of the other things. Mirror Image and Pass Without Trace are also on the list. None of those are bad. There you go, none of those are bad. And you get a Charm Person and Disguise Self as well. And the last 2 I forgot. I know that Polymorph is on the list though. Trickery clerics get Polymorph, and that is pretty wild. You have no other subclass as a cleric that grants you access to Polymorph. So this gives you an edge in combat for sure. But you'll notice that the other abilities of the cleric are kind of weird and don't line up with Polymorph because it's already a concentration spell. Trickster clerics can do something really cool at level 1, and without limit you just only have 1 active at a time. They can touch someone to give them advantage on stealth checks for an hour or until you use the feature again. There is no limit to how many times you can do this, so somebody in the party always has advantage on stealth checks. This is really good for all those situations where you know that you have to sneak past something and you look at the fighter or the paladin in the heavy armor and they're already sweating it because they have negative dex and disadvantage on stealth. This way you can cancel that out, or if you're sending in 1 person you can seriously overclock their stealth game. So this is actually, for a level 1 feature with no clear limit to it, a pretty good feature. The only limit is, of course, you can only have 1 target at a time gaining this buff, but it is concentrationless, it uses no resources, it's niche but it's limitless practically, so that's a pretty good one. Level 2 means you gain Channel Divinity Invoke Duplicity, which means you can make a clone out of yourself, a perfect clone that you can order around with a bonus action. The bad news is this thing, it's one of those things that is worded as if you're concentrating on a spell, so that usually means, if I'm correct, that this eats up your concentration slot. So you can make this perfect clone of yourself, which you can move around within a certain range, which grants you, but only you, advantage when you're flanking an enemy with it, but it requires your concentration, which is a bit silly because this would be better if you could combine it with one of the cleric's quite numerous, or at least very present, amount of spells that enhance combat. There's a few on the list, or am I mixing it up with the paladin? Anyway, there are spells that like mix up, that improve your melee combat. Clerics are never the best melee combat class to begin with. So gaining yourself rounds of advantage would line up really well with even something stupid like magic weapon, you know. But since that is also a concentration spell, that's it, you can't. So I think this feature is really being held back by the fact that it eats up your concentration. Otherwise, it's really fun. Having a clone of you walk around leaves a lot of room for trickery and cheating people and confusing them. So that's good. It's a really fun, out of combat, this is a really fun thing to play around with because it's a moving, working, functioning illusion at level 2. That is pretty rare. Other classes can just do silent damage or a minor illusion, stuff like that. So this is pretty good on the level of illusion that you gain it, but its applications in combat are limited due to the action economy that it requires from you. Once you get to the higher levels, having a clone walk about of yourself is not going to be as useful as some of the concentration spells that you have access to. Does reset or short rest because it's a channel divinity. Very extraordinary, the trickery cleric against 2 channel divinities, and the second one has more use even though it's very short in duration. Channel divinity Cloak of Shadows makes you invisible for a full turn. You're invisible until the end of your next turn, and you obviously pop out of invisibility if you attack or cast a spell. 6 seconds of invisibility is niche, but can be enough in combat to quickly reposition yourself to get something done. So this offers some other form of mobility for your cleric on the battlefield. Outside of combat, it's going to be pretty useless because it's only 6 seconds. Maybe like 10 if you say, oh, I cast it immediately at the start of my turn, which you don't have out of combat, and it lasts until the end of my next turn, so there's a bit of that. But it's really short, so it's not good enough for exploration, so that's a bit meh. It's good in combat to reposition yourself to get out of a tricky situation. It's weird that it shares, like, you have 2 channel divinities along with Turn Undead. Neither of them are explicitly good, but they share the same resource, so I think that's a bit sad. Cloak would have been better with a separate resource, so that at least you can use all of your channel divinity power for the already mediocre option that you have. At level 8 you get Divine Strike. Pretty unique here is that you deal poison damage as a Divine Strike, which once again isn't the best option. I kind of get what they want to do here with the backstabbing from trickery and this and that. Honestly, the entire trickery cleric to me sounds like a setup to multi-class trickery and rogues, because rogues will benefit from the advantage of invoke duplicity. Rogues won't often have another thing they're concentrating on and will love the constant advantage because that gives them sneak attack. So in my head, this is just an entire game that wants you to play a cleric rogue. Because poison damage fits rogues also thematically, but poison damage is not always the most interesting damage type. It gets resisted often if you're fighting undead, which normally a cleric is supposed to be good at because you have Turn Undead. Your damage won't get through because you have poison damage on your smacks now, and that is not really what you want, so that's a bit too bad. You also get improved duplicity at level 17, which sounds really cool. Instead of 1 copy, you now make 14. You can move them all... 14, what the hell? Instead of 1 copy, you now make 4. You can move them around with the same bonus action, but the still limits still apply. You still have to use an action to set it up, a bonus action to move them around. You're still the only one who gains advantage from them. You're still concentrating on it as if it was a concentration spell. So the limitations are there. I think what your clones do during combat, the kind of attention that they attract, is all up to your dungeon master, because unlike other illusion spells, there's not a DC to see that it's a clone, an illusion, because it's such a good clone. But also, I think that disinclines, that's not a word, it makes it less natural for a dungeon master to have its NPCs fall for it, because normally they say, oh yeah, my guard is confused by your illusion, he'll roll to see if it's a fake one. But here they just, I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint how your dungeon master has to deal with this. It's fun in my head though, because if you have like 5 copies of yourself with the original one included and then cast mirror image, there's like 7 clerics running about, and it's a lot of fun and confusion, but it doesn't translate into actual mechanics, which makes it difficult for dungeon masters to deal with the subclass on the battlefield. I think it is not a subclass that is easy to deal with as a beginner dungeon master. There you go. How do I rate this subclass? It's in the meh category of clerics. They have a lot better stuff, as I already said. There's cool stuff, and creative players will have a lot of fun with the illusions, but it requires a flexible DM. And if you have a DM with really rules as written, this is going to be a tough subclass to negotiate with, even though you can do a lot of cool stuff. As I said, really cool in the subterfuge exploration part. You're still a cleric, so I mean, you always have what clerics have in combat, but they want to lean into melee combat with the advantage and the divine strike, but eating up your concentration or not giving you the right spells to do so really kind of blocks you from going that path. So I honestly think this would work really well with a rogue. I'm not exactly sure on the level split. The good news is neither of them get extra attacks. There's more flexibility in how many levels you could take to make this function as a rogue. I don't know, maybe I should try that out. Maybe one of, oh, well, yes, let's do that. One of my next builds will be like a trickery cleric something rogue, and we'll see how we can balance those two. Perfect. I forgot one thing about the Invoke Duplicity clones that I have to say before we head into the Twilight Cleric. The clones allow you to cast from the position of a clone. So there's something to be said for that your cleric can stay in cover, you move the clone about, and then you use the clone to cast spells while you remain safe. That is something that can easily be done in combat. The clones don't have hit points or whatever, so I don't think they can be killed. So you basically can just summon an image of yourself, send it out to do your dirty work while you keep hidden in case you should really need to appear for something. It's a bit of a weird playstyle, but hey, it's a possibility. Next up is the Twilight Cleric. I love the flavor of these guys, having a cleric balance between light and darkness. Really nice, really fun. They also gain a lot of different options. I think they sometimes lack a bit of a mechanical theme, not like an overall theme, that's pretty clear and well done, but they lack a bit of a mechanical theme, but instead they gain a whole slew of good options, period. They gain decent spells to support, they have a few really good features. They don't, let's say, they're not like the Tempest Cleric, clearly built about blowing stuff up. These guys are a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And I have to say, it came out later than the Trickery Cleric, this one. This one actually has a few, one or two spells or features that I would actually have expected on the Trickery Cleric. So, it's a bit weird. But hey, let's have a look at this subclass because it really is, as I've heard, a blast to play. Haven't had the pleasure to do so myself. First off, always something good. You get proficiency in heavy armor and martial weapons. What's not to like there? Then you get spells like Fairy Fire, Moonbeam, Sea Invisibility, Aura of Vitality, Leomund's Tiny Hut, Aura of Life, Greater Invisibility. Surely Trickery Clerics could have gotten this one. Circle of Power, which protects your party from magic in a really efficient way. And Mislead, surely another spell that Trickery Clerics could have enjoyed, but I don't think Mislead was already out when Trickery Clerics came out in the original player's handbook. What Mislead does is you become invisible, but you leave a copy of yourself. Gee, where have I heard this leaving copies of myself thing before? Oh wait, Trickery Clerics! Anyway, there's no clear theme here. You're playing with light and shadow a lot. Fairy Fire, you have lights. You lay them to sleep somewhere in the shadows, I don't know. Mislead, you disappear. Greater Invisibility, you disappear. Aura Vitality, you project light to heal people. Leomund's Tiny Hut, you hide again in the shadows. So maybe that's the theme they're going for here. It's not as thematically clear as some other spellists, but they are very varied and useful spells, so that's good. Also, you gain Dark Vision up to 300 feet or something crazy. And once per long rest, you can touch a bunch of people. I think it's equal to your wisdom modifier. And they can all gain dark vision as well. You know there's a spell Dark Vision, which is a 2nd level spell. This guy gets it at level 1. And it's a better version. And even better, if you do want to cast it again before the end of a long rest, you can just spend any spell slot to do so. So you basically have an enhanced version of Dark Vision in a 1st level spell slot. Hot diggity damn. Even if Dark Vision doesn't break the game, this is a nice level 1 feature to have along the other thing that he has, basically where he can touch someone to give them advantage on an initiative roll. It lasts until the roll is done. You can only enhance one person at a time. I don't think... you have a limit on the feature. No, it's like the stealth touching of the stealth touching. It's like the stealth touching of the trickery cleric. You can just do this over and over again, but only one person at a time. So that makes it really, like, it's nice. It's framed well, but these two together already make for a nice support. You can give whoever doesn't have dark vision in the party dark vision. You can make someone act faster in combat, which, as we all know, the right things done at the start of combat can really have a big effect on how the entire thing is going. Your channel divinity is Twilight Sanctuary. It starts off pretty okay, it gets wilder later on. You project a large sphere for a minute, I think it's 20-foot radius, and everybody who ends their turn in the sphere, which includes you, gains 1d6 temporary hit points, and you can end a charmed or frightened effect on them for free. No action required, no bonus action, no reaction, whatever. So that's pretty cool. The temporary hit point does not scale, so it's always 1d6. Then again, it is at the end of each turn that you end in the orb, and it lasts 10 turns. So it's never going to be horrible. It's temporary hit points. They can refill themselves. This is a good feature. This is a nice supporty defensive feature for your squad. 20 feet radius also means there's 40 feet of globe to get into. So that's a large space for your party to hide in. The sphere also provides dim light. So if you're in total darkness and you don't have enough dark vision to go around, you just do this thing. So it's a pretty good feature, actually. The level 6 feature is a bit wild here. Remember how Tempest Clerics get flight at level 17? These guys can get a flying speed equal to their normal speed at level 6, provided they are in dim light or lower. It's only for 1 minute, of course. It's limited here. It's equal to... Oh yeah, it's equal to... It's a bonus action, I think, and it's equal to your proficiency modifier in times of use. So it's not the same as the Tempest Cleric, who can do it infinitely without any problems as long as he's outside. But this is pretty cool. Gain a flying speed at level 6 because it says dim light or lower, and guess what? Your channel divinity orb projects dim light around you. So it's like channel divinity, fly, and they stick together really well for a full minute. So that's pretty cool. It fits a theme, I guess, of being somewhat darkness oriented. As I said, it's a nice flavor, but they've expressed it in weird ways mechanically, but it's such a mixed bag of goods that it really works. Your Divine Strike then again deals radiant damage, because we have to balance all the flying in the darkness by making you spank righteous sparks when you hit someone with your epic mace. But I think the fun part is, alas, it's obviously level 17, Twilight Shroud. Your level 17 feature makes it so that while your orb is projected, everyone inside not only has the temporary hit points and the Charmed Frightened that you can end, but they also gain half cover. And I can see, I think half cover, nobody uses cover rules. No, but if I want to translate that into numbers for you, it's +2 armor class and +2 on all your dexterity saves. And that is never bad. You can project Shield of Fate in a 20-foot radius around you, and it's concentrationless. It is never bad. This is a good subclass. This is probably one of the better ones, even though, as I've said, mechanically they're all over the place. All of what they do is useful. Hence, they're good. Why are they not more consistent? I don't know. Let's just move over to the last one, the War Clerics. As Edwin Starr once sang, "War, what is it good for?" Being really accurate when wanting to whack something. That is the main thing that the War Clerics are really good at. But first, let's have a look at a spell. If you look at the spells, in my personal opinion, there's quite a few things that are good. You get a few cleric spells that everybody likes and loves, like Spiritual Weapon, Shield of Fate. You get those all prepared all the time, not bad. And that gets joined by some paladin spells, like Divine Favor at level 1, which says that all of your attacks deal 1d4 extra radiant damage, which is cool because you're obviously playing a melee focused cleric here, but you never get extra attacks or the likes, which kind of is the how Divine Favor scales. You know, Divine Favor to me scales because some of the classes that get extra attack and hence can whack for more d4s. The cleric does not, so it's a bit of an odd fit, especially since it can only be cast on yourself. Yes, it's level 1 spell, but other classes make it scale because of their innate abilities, and that's actually a bit the war cleric should be combined with a fighter to create a slightly alternative paladin. That's how that works in my head. This is the cleric that was the first paladin or whatever and gave rise to the order of paladins afterwards. You know how in Warcraft lore, paladins are basically just priests who got pissed, started training in fighting and then accompanied the soldiers to war. That's kind of, this is like the first guy. This is the founder of the Order of the Silver Hand who just picked up a big hammer and walked with the soldiers to war. So his spells are cleric paladin-y. They're not bad, but they're not always optimal for what you want to do. Though you do get Crusader's Mantle, and if I'm not mistaken, that spell radiates that extra damage to your teammates as well. But as I said, it's a mixed bag. Just like your abilities, they're all very melee, heavy, oriented, but you always ever get one attack as a cleric, which kind of hampers the entire shebang of what you want to do. Luckily, there's a few things you get to just make you more survivable on the front lines and to help out your allies. Such as you get obvious proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. You are a war priest. You get another really good feature at level 1, where as a bonus action you can basically perform extra attacks. So I said the clerics don't get extra attack, which is true. This one can kind of pick it up, but only 5 times per day, and that is when your wisdom is maxed out. If you're in a really combat heavy day, 5 times is, you're going to do more than, or want to do more than 5 attacks obviously in a day. Also, it eats up your bonus actions, so you cannot do bonus action spells to help out, like that quick healing word to revive the downed ally will not happen, or will happen, but then you will not be able to smack twice. At lower levels this is pretty okay. You'll start out with 3 extra attacks at level 1, that is actually pretty strong, but it doesn't scale that well, and later on in the game you just don't have enough extra attacks to cover the fantasy decently, I think. But if you combine this with actual fighter levels, you can have extra attack and then bonus attack for 1 more. That actually makes it pretty good. So this is a nice, I think War Priest in general, the War Domain is a nice multi-class feature, but not as strong on its own. Further guiding your attacks is your Channel Divinity Guided Strike. You can basically channel Divinity to add +10 to your attack. You can do it post your own roll, but pre the DM tells you whether you hit or miss. But that's +10, ladies and gentlemen. That's insane. That's almost guaranteeing a hit if you didn't roll total bejangles. So that's good, and it's your Channel Divinity, so it resets on a short rest. You get a second charge eventually. It's good for making that one attack that needs to hit. What's even better is that at level 6 you gain the ability to do this on someone else within 30 feet or whatever. And I think that's the great value here, because your own strikes are always going to be a bit lackluster, even with Divine Strike, which you get at level 8. But being able to buff the teammate for the right hit, that might be a nice thing. It's not a bad feature, but again, it's limited to 2 uses per short rest, but then again it's +10 on an attack. But you have it, you can do it. It's not a bad feature. It weaves this is the opposite, I think, of the Twilight Cleric, where mechanically they clearly all have abilities that want to enhance the thing, but it's something that has to be enhanced more for it to work decently. Anyway, it'll work. Divine Strike, as I said, a bit of a unique Divine Strike here, because you deal damage of the same type that your weapon is already dealing. And I think that's, in a lot of cases, a slight debuff here. If you have a magic weapon, no problem, you'll just deal more magical piercing damage or whatever. If you don't though, if you don't have a magic weapon yet, Divine Strike was often a nice way to, like, oh, I deal my 8 bludgeoning damage, but I also deal 8 radiant damage, and I think that's going to have more of an effect. So the need for a magic weapon is even bigger for the War Cleric here than for his colleagues. And then the last one that you get at level 17 makes you resistant to non-magical physical damage, so piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, which is okay. I think it'll help you survive. Sure, there are plenty of like a dragon attacks with claws that are not magical, only taking half damage from those is perfectly fine. I wanted something with more oomph though. I don't think he necessarily needed a defensive feature so late in the game, at a point where a lot of things are going to be hopefully casting spells at you as well, or have a magic weapon of their own. It's going to be great against like natural predators who don't have magic weapons, I guess. But it's a bit of an underwhelming level 17 feature. The flavor of the war domain is strong. The mechanical follow-up is mediocre. It'll work. You'll deal out some pretty hefty punches by being able to add damage on top of a +10 attack roll, but you're never going to shine in melee combat, and that is what this subclass really wants to do. So I think this is not a really good cleric subclass. It'll work, it'll do the thing, and it will still give you better melee options while still having the entire cleric spell list. Then again, if you have the entire cleric spell list, why do you want to whack people with a mediocre stick? So that's why it's mechanically not fulfilling, but it is probably one of the best, if not the best, melee cleric, which is just something this class is not supposed to do at higher levels, I think. Not without the proper support, and this subclass doesn't provide it. It's over, it's done. I'm free from this cleric subclasses. I can hear you say, Sam, first, I thought you loved cleric, and two, aren't there 2 more subclasses? Yes, I love clerics, but after talking about them for 5 episodes, even I have seen my fill of them. And 2, it's true, there's the Order of Blood, Domain of Blood and Domain of the Moon. Those are critical role subclasses, and as you know, I don't cover those in my subclass talks. I stick to the 100% genuine wizards material. Maybe if I'm in a funky mood, I'll do the Exandria stuff later on. But for now, I'm happy that I can say that I will be able to compile all of my cleric videos into one giant how to play a cleric playlist with all of the general classes, roleplay and subclasses videos in there. And that's what I like. It makes me feel accomplished. Now I can move on to a class with less subclasses, because we all know the wizard is waiting down the line with more of this. I need 5 videos to complete my class stuff. Thank you, dear people, for watching me. I hope to see you all again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.